They have events scheduled all week. They're mostly environmentalists who've been trying to save a wooded area.
Some protesters accusing police in this latest incident of violating civil rights.
This is the first time I'm hearing about this protest over the weekend, so just would have to come back to you on that.
The accused domestic terrorists even referred to as environmentalists.
That when you look at sort of all of these leftist sympathizers in the media, you have to look at the pipeline, right? So you have to understand that in these newsrooms and in the classrooms that lead to the newsrooms, from top to bottom, you have at best sort of mainstream liberals, and at worst these sort of far left Antifa sympathizers, but actively covering for it. And you saw this Antifa guy from the Southern Poverty Law Center that got arrested just a couple of days ago. So you have these people that have infiltrated not only the news media, but these far left organizations, and they're covering for this stuff.
Mostly environmentalists trying to save the trees.
It's like mostly peaceful protests, right? As the building's burning in the background.
Here in Portland, for weeks, Antifa and other anarchist groups were torching courthouses, and the mainstream media as well as left-wing politicians were completely silent on it, when in fact there is much more violence coming from the left.
And the truth is, it's been going on for years.
Oh, it's been going on for years. I mean, remember the Summer of Love in 2020, right? Now, that was a lot of Antifa, that was a lot of far left stuff, and we were told, again, mostly peaceful protests, like mostly peaceful protests, right? As the building's burning in the background.
Here line, we just saw an officer extracted. An officer was down. We don't know exactly how they were injured. Another officer here that was standing on these steps took some glass in the arm. These demonstrators are ready to confront these law enforcement officers, but there are officers that we can report. At least 2 officers have been injured. One of them, it appeared to be seriously injured. He was being dragged out.
I want to be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest. It is not, generally speaking, unruly, but fires have been started.
The biggest victims of the rioting are peace-loving citizens in our poorest communities. And as their president, I will fight I swore an oath to uphold the laws of our nation, and that is exactly what I will do.
It's like mostly peaceful protests, right? As the building's burning in the background.
Here inside CNN Center, we're just in the last 10 minutes. Demonstrators have started to come up and down this thoroughfare of Marietta and break out windows of CNN Center.
Our nation has been gripped by professional anarchists, violent mobs, arsonists, looters, criminals, rioters, Antifa, and others. A number of state and local governments have failed to take necessary action to safeguard their residents. Innocent people have been savagely beaten, like the young man in Dallas, Texas, who was left dying on the street, or the woman in upstate New York viciously attacked by dangerous thugs. Small business owners have seen their dreams utterly destroyed. New York's finest have been hit in the face with bricks. Brave nurses who have battled the virus are afraid to leave their homes. A police precinct has been overrun. Here in the nation's capital, the Lincoln Memorial and the World War II Memorial have been vandalized. One of our most historic churches was set ablaze.
During COVID, that he released 8,000 convicted felons. Some of them were violent offenders, Tucker, and the odds are that at least half of them are going to reoffend.
It's like mostly peaceful protests, right? As the building's burning in the background.
A federal officer in California, an African-American enforcement hero, was shot and killed.
I want to be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest. It is not, generally speaking, unruly, but fires have been started.
It is the foundation of our prosperity, our freedom, and our very way of life. But where there is no law, there is no opportunity. Where there is no justice, there is no liberty. Where there is no safety, there is no future. We must never give in to anger or hatred. If malice or violence reigns, then none of us is free.
Precinct here, there are fires burning to the left of it at the wine and liquor store on your left, but back in the back of the precinct, you're hearing people throwing things against the walls, against the glass, against anything they can. And now the fire alarm, you'll see it flashing inside of the 3rd precinct. Behind the 3rd precinct, just behind it, is a fire that is billowing and has been going for a few minutes now, really strongly. But you hear people cheering every time they get through one of the windows there with whatever it is they're throwing. It sounds like they're throwing, you can see pieces of concrete.
These are not acts of peaceful protest. These are acts of domestic terror.
Like mostly peaceful protests, right? As the building's burning in the background.
Here, protests started at about noon today in Seattle, but turned destructive right around 4 p.m. when someone lit a Seattle police cruiser on fire. Since then, we have seen widespread looting and destruction downtown. Also tonight, we should let you know that 200 members of the Washington National Guard have been called up to come into Seattle. 75 have been deployed to Seattle tonight. The other 125 will arrive in the city tomorrow.
Like mostly peaceful protests, right? As the building's burning in the background.
Here, all of this started earlier today with a peaceful protest at about noon just outside Seattle Police headquarters. People protesting the death of George Floyd.
We're actually watching this growing crowd trying to break into the T-Mobile back behind us, and I can hear glass. It sounds like they're making their way through.
My wife and I this morning were having a conversation about how horrible what happened was, and then we have to deal with this,
What's happening here?
That's...
They're burning the car.
I'm sorry, you can't sugarcoat this one. This is a riot, dude, all day.
Under emergency orders, Wisconsin's National Guard rolled into Kenosha and issued just one warning.
You need to disperse. Gas will be deployed if you do not disperse.
Well, having been jailed on domestic violence charges, George Howard posted an $11,500 bail. He did it with the support of the Minnesota Freedom Fund. Now, the Freedom Fund became well known during the riots which followed the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Politicians and celebs got on board as they were posting bail for those arrested during the riots, and Kamala Harris was one of them, evidenced by a tweet from June of 2020. If you're able to chip in now to the Minnesota Freedom Fund to help post bail for those protesting on the ground in Minnesota. The Freedom Fund acknowledged supporting Howard's bail.
Well, Tucker, excellent monologue as usual. 3 broad themes. The first is, let's talk about the police. The police in city after city, whether it's LA, whether it's Chicago, whether it's New York, they are demoralized by this lie that they are engaging in systemic racism.